Okay, here we go. So as Christy had talked about, I hear this a lot as a business consulting industry. People say, hey, what are the steps that we can have to help us have our data become more accurate? And so I've put together a few things here for us to discuss today. I am looking forward to the questions and answers at the end. But first and foremost, everybody always says, I want accurate data. But they don't always understand the steps that help us get there. So obviously that's going to be what we're addressing. And just by using PSA, you're going to have more accurate data than if you weren't, meaning that just putting jobs in PSA and beginning to use basic functions of it is going to give you a degree of accuracy. So there's no insinuation here that your data is not accurate, but you might ask, is it as accurate as it could be, or I maybe want it to be? So by using PSA, you've got a great head start. And obviously our goal is to get it to a place of absolute trust. Everybody wants to be able to trust their job cost reports. Everybody wants to be able to trust their incentives. Owners and managers want to be able to trust the data is correct so that they can make great decisions for driving through the business. Just making sure you guys aren't seeing my screen, are you?
No, we are now.
How about now?
Yep.
Okay. Just dawned on me there was one more button to click. Okay, so hopefully you guys have caught up with me and you see that I've got bullet points up on the screen. So when we really begin to go through here and look at the benefits of having trustworthy data, here you go. Real-time decisions for improvement. Not overreacting to shallow interpretations. And what I mean by that is it's so often we'll look at data, well, oh my God, it's terrible. But when we really dive into the analytics of it and really begin to understand how the numbers are being built, maybe it's not as bad as we think. Capture ratios are a great example of that. For you to gain a clear understanding of performance is by all your personnel. So your estimators, your project managers, your coordinators, your salespeople. Very important to understand these details for these folks. Where your referral sources are coming from and what insurance companies you're working with. You may want to evaluate what your profit margins are by any of these scenarios. I've seen times to where I've seen companies that I don't want anymore work because they can't be successful with it. So we definitely want to be able to track that information. And of course, job types, locations, teams, any other environment that you would like to slice information by, you would want to be able to evaluate. And also we'll be able to use this for doing profound business forecast. So to me, it's always important in a business to be able to understand what is and where we're going so that we can adjust accordingly. So these are your benefits. So some of the key steps to improving the data accuracy is get all your members of the company on the same page as to what drives your PSA reporting. And so some of the items I recommend are dates. Okay, your software is date driven, folks. And so if you don't understand the dates and how they affect the statuses of jobs, the reports, how everything shows up, I'm amazed at how often I run across people that are not getting dates correctly. So it's very important that everybody in your company has a great format for what the dates are, what they drive, and when we use them. I'll give you a classic example. You have date approved, and I say at least 50% of the time when I start working with new companies, they're using date approved as the adjuster approval. But it's the date that tells us when something is sold. And so usually sold would mean customer approval. Now, there's some variations of how you could do this, but it's just important that we'll be on the same page between you, the management, and any of their staff as to how they're using these dates to where they can accurately input them. Financial numbers. So we're talking about the estimated revenue amounts, what's been invoiced, what's been collected, your budgets, your actual costs, your percent completes. All of these numbers being consistently managed are going to drive better data accuracy. And of course, one of my favorites and something that most people won't know, but the general note topic, which is reason for close, this note populates to your job management report. And so if you guys will begin to understand that this note can give you a lot of tools. Most often we use it for why we're closing a job. That's what it was designed for. But we actually have migrated this to be what we call a blood pressure note. And you can imagine yours truly, as a former GM of a restoration company, could look at jobs and see, oh, here's a USAA job that hasn't been inspected for 10 days. My blood pressure went up. My phone popped out of my holster, and I called people to ask them why. And so our staff began to recognize that we could use this topic and enter a note that specifically addressed maybe why we haven't inspected something or any reason that we're out of compliance. And then they would put in a short note that would explain it, and they found it lowered my blood pressure. So the nickname stuff that those became BP notes or blood pressure notes. And so you can get really creative in using this topic accordingly, especially if you're looking and viewing the job management report. The reality of it is once everyone has been demonstrated and that they understand the importance of these, and they a company can begin to improve accountability to the consistency they're utilizing. And what I mean by that is that if your people are slow to get consistent at it, then you'll be slow to recognize accountability. But if you can get everybody moving in the same path of being consistent on how they're behaving with these dates, these financial numbers, the use of blood pressure notes, then all of a sudden your data is going to be able to sing with great accountability. And so I'm going to give you some tools and some examples for some of this. So one of the things that we recommend is that you have daily updates by each member of your production staff. And so some people are written where they have, set up where they have estimators, project managers, superintendents, lead techs, coordinators. Some people call them PMA, some people call them project coordinators, team coordinators. So whatever your admin role is for your work, I'm going to call them coordinators for a thing. Is we really want to make sure that our estimators are doing their updates daily. And so when you look at the estimators and what they're specifically updating, it could be dates of inspections, dates of completing estimates, things like that. Certainly estimate amounts, and they certainly have the ability to put in blood pressure notes as well. So that's the estimator, and this would be a daily task of updating. Your PMs that are producing the work, same thing, except for they're not only dealing with financial changes specific to change orders or things with the customers, but they may be also looking at margin adjustments due to the fact that the job's going off budget or they're beating the budget. And so they're the ones that are most in tune with those details. And then of course your coordinators who are every day writing code on your software and your data to make sure everything's up to date. So you'll not hear me say that coordinators are solely responsible for PSA's data entry, but I would say they are solely responsible to write code on it and view it to make sure that there's anything missing that they can clean it up. And so that's a supporting role to these two roles. By the way, I'm going to go back one just for a second to say that oftentimes what we find in most cultures is that there's a morning huddle that happens at least between these roles. And in some cases, we actually print the job management report the night before. We highlight the things that we need to know, and then we leave it in these people's inboxes to where in their commute to the job, they can call and they can communicate. It doesn't take long between these roles to provide the communication needed to have our daily updates done. Okay, so we use a file closeout checklist. And so the idea of this is that if you truly want to make sure that your reports are accurate, especially on jobs that are completed and closed, is that you have a consistent method or a uniform method, if you will, of completing and closing all jobs. And the checklist is usually divided by each role. And so an estimator would have their portion that they would fill out. A project manager would have their portion they'd fill out, and a coordinator, of course, would have theirs. But the goal of this is that we have a consistent method of dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and making sure that everything is done and accounted for, to where when we go run our reports, those reports will be accurate. I don't mind telling you that this checkoff list is probably the single most important tool to assure that you're going to have accurate job costing reports and incentive reports. Okay, a lot of people may be completely relaxed all through the job of keeping their updates done, but they do a really good job of closing things out to where that part of the reporting is really good. And so I suggest you use both, but this is a must. Along with that, you want to secure critical dates that are entered by management only. And depending on how you structure incentives and what the requirements are, it's very important to understand that if you're allowing just anybody to enter in critical dates, then it could potentially allow a job to skip through our accountability process to ensure our data is accurate. So examples of those dates could be your complete dates. Now, some people use the complete date as, hey, this is when the work's done. I would coach you to say that the complete date really should be that not only is the work done, but you'll also have everything invoiced, all your work orders and purchase orders are closed, which would theoretically mean all your costs is in, your photos are uploaded, you have your signed COS, your file is complete. And so oftentimes people will hear me refer to the actual complete date if you're looking at the web, or complete date if you're looking at the desktop, as actually the file complete date, because this is when we have our file complete. The other thing about the actual complete date is that when you enter that date in on a job, if you're running the production report or the job management report, for the most part, unless you expand the date ranges, you will not see jobs that have a completed date on those reports. So I found that I want to make sure certain things are done before we enter that date. And so that would be a date that I would assign to somebody, I call them the gatekeeper, that says that one person in the company's job is to make sure nobody receives that date until our criteria has been fulfilled. And so, yes, I give special security to that date. You may also want to have your last day on job if you want to protect some of your lien rights and things like that. Of course, your production close date, which in my world, it means that the job has been completed and paid for, would be a date that I want to make sure and protect. I do that specifically because we usually run our incentives with a criteria that says a job has to be paid and closed within a certain number of days from the last day on job. And so these are all dates that I would secure that a production people would not have the ability to enter. They would have to demonstrate that they've earned those dates, and then we would give them to them. And as I'm talking about, management is always there to verify and confirm that things are complete to our standards so that we can ensure our data accountability. All right, so with regards to leadership and management, I can tell you that anything you want improved, it's about measure, measure, and measure. Every time we found a deficiency in our data or our processes, we found a way to measure it, and by doing so, it gave us the ability to improve it. And so you'll actually see, I actually say all the time, the speed of the group is based on the pace of the leadership. The better you are and the more consistent you are in measuring and holding this process accountable, the better you'll get a response to this. So well known in restoration, we have the ability to have events hit us, get us completely out of balance. Everybody's mocked through thicker on fire, and we slip in our documentation to be consistently accurate. And so one of the things I always suggest is that at some point when you're catching your breath from that storm and you're ready to get back on top of things, you may want to initiate what I call as a 4-week exercise. And the goal would be that everybody involved in the data management would go to work on getting everything cleaned up and caught up with the goal that it would be perfect within 4 weeks. Now, oftentimes we can do it faster than 4 weeks, but 4 weeks is a good number, especially if you're way out of balance. And what I found was that the very second I took the pressure off of the data being accurate, everybody else would relax and the data would slip away again. And so that's why I talk about you as leadership. If you're not consistently looking at information, driving the accountability, that then your people, not that they don't care, but your people in this industry will respond to what's hotter and they'll relax this portion of their consistent behavior. So you really want to make sure you're driving that consistent behavior. Okay, so at this point, I told you that I was going to show you a few tools, and so I'm going to pop open a couple things that I've created here as an example. One of the things that I have as an example of what I call our file closeout checklist, that talks about what things PMs do. And so PMs are usually producing the work, they're making sure everything's in and locked up and reconciling their job, including the COS photos, etc. And then the estimator usually is reconciling the financials of the job and the supplements with the adjuster and making sure everything is right with regards to what we're about to bill. And then generally speaking, our coordinators doing the billing and verify that all the work orders are closed. And again, all the way through our process, we're seeing that there's a step for everything. On my checkoff list, you'll notice that there's asterisks here, and these asterisks is
Chris, we're not seeing your screen.
you're not.
No, sir.
Oh, maybe I need to move it there. How's that? You see it there?
Much better. Yep.
Yeah, gotta forget what screen I'm on. Okay, I apologize, guys. So checkoff list, PM section, estimator section, and coordinator section. But you'll notice we have asterisks on certain items. And these items are the items that before anybody earns like that complete date, the gatekeeper or the corporate person that's going to verify is going to look at each one of these items, verify that they're done. And at that point, yes, you've earned the date, we'll give it to you. If not, we're giving it back to you to say, please complete your task. And so this checkoff list, I can tell you, is probably one of the single most valuable tools that we ever give anybody. And I can tell you that the company that I ran, there was a gentleman that created this as a mean of just being consistency, but it completely changed our world from the standpoint of accurate data. So this is a key tool. Second thing that you may want to consider having is some sort of identity for what I call the time constraints. Each company, works with different vendor programs and what have you. So you may want to come in here, and you can even do it by job type, where you set up a standard as your company is to from the time we have a job received to the time we inspect it, should it happen within a certain amount of time. And if everybody understands what the expectation is, then they would also know when they need to put in blood pressure notes. And so if something's exceeding 3 days, to have it scoped from the receive date, then put a blood pressure note that explains why. All of a sudden, the efficiency of which we move through our reports without having to stop and ask 16 questions to our people in the field becomes faster and faster. We even suggest that you use your percent complete date in such a way, or your percent complete to be used in different fashions. For me, we love to have a probability of close. In other words, when the job has not been sold yet, but it's been inspected or in pending, we ask for them to put in a coding here that allows us to know if the job's got a 100% chance of selling, 80%, 60%, or hey, in some cases, we don't want the job. And I realize that the software has a field for probability of close, but it doesn't populate to your job management report. So we suggest that you use the percent complete. And then at the end of the jobs or production, you may want to have a coding in here that talks about the various closing out stages, punch list phase, waiting on COSs, or hey, everything's done, we're just getting the job fully invoiced and getting the cost in. And this will help you see those bottlenecks at the end of your jobs. I even give you examples here of what a blood pressure note looks like. So these tools are things that, along with the information I've given you today, if you can just design something that allows everybody to be consistent, you're going to improve your accuracy. All right. That's a fast 23 minutes. I'm giving some time for questions, and we'll open that up now.
you have any questions, if you guys could just enter them into the chat box and we'll take a look at that. So
Okay.
far, none. Chris, you did a
Yeah.
great job.
It looks like I just have everybody either complete and understand what they need to do, or nobody wants to pipe in their questions. But certainly, if there's questions that come in afterwards, then I'm happy to report and answer any possible questions you may have.
Oh, wait, Megan asked, are you utilizing workflows for your time constraint managing?
Good question. And my answer is no, I'm not, but I'm not saying I'm against them. Oftentimes because of how we use our job management reports and how we drive things with our expectations, we find that the workflows can over remind people to do what we're already managing. And so, you know, if you're setting things up that way, it's awesome. Good, use them. But I always would say be careful of how much if you're over reminding people, it almost teaches them in some cases to not use the software. And while I wait on any other questions, I'll show you guys that one of the things I was going to show you a job management report, but one of the things that I love to do is this is our analytic tool where we actually take a job management report and we put it out to a digital format like this. And you'll notice that some of the boxes are red here. These boxes are jobs that have exceeded the expectation. So it's this gives awareness to the coordinator to say, oops, I need to get a date in here, or possibly to put a blood pressure note in. And you can see those notes can pop up here. And it also gives managers the ability to quickly look and see, are there things out of compliance that need to be brought into compliance. And so you can, whether you're using a printed job management report or something like this, you certainly have the ability to come in and conditionalize your expectations and see when things are out of compliance. So the workflow tool is fantastic. It works really well. But it's something that because of how we coach them to manage, we find that it's overkill. Thanks, Nathan, for the question. Any other questions?
I do. Grab him. Unmute.
Yeah, Chris, we got a question.
Okay.
We're finding it. This is Jason over at Liberty.
Hey, Jason.
We're trying to find the you have the sheet, John. We're pulling up our sheet. We have questions. Maybe you're not.
Oh, something went wrong. What's going on?
Talking to me?
No, our sheet. One second, it's in SharePoint. I'm working with half a screen. My computer is being a little silly right now. So, is there a way on JOC on the standard 16 pages where we can find how many mitigation jobs, what the conversion rate is? Or how many mitigation jobs do we have that also include a repair?
Well, your opportunities versus sold would give you the conversion rate. So you can certainly come in here and look at your.
Is there a way to set up the system to where we can see?
Oh, you're talking about the conversion rate of mitigations and repairs?
Yes.
I'm sure there is. I'm not sure that falls into the subject matter of this conversation. I'm happy to talk with you guys outside of this call, but because this is a PSA call.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'll call you afterwards.
Well, we're on PSA. That's why I know we just, and sorry, Les actually just called for a quick question. So I stepped out and I just walked back in and saw you had gone to this. So sorry for an inappropriate question. What's fair game? Questions? What's fair game? We'll ask one.
You say there is a question?
Well, what is fair game for PSA? So,
All right, so as far as, is there a way within PSA that I know of to figure out what percentage of the water jobs are converting to repairs? I don't, short of dumping it to Excel and really beginning to look at that, but it would be very important that you use your sub job type to identify that the repair job came from a water.
yeah.
So as long as you guys were consistently using your sub job type to identify the original source of referral, as far as what job originally came in, then you could be able to look at how many repair jobs happened that originally started as a water job.
Okay.
That's how I would approach it.
Okay. Well, we'll jump on a call with you later on some of these other questions we have. So I just thought, oh, if we have some extra time, we'll do it right now. But, okay.
Okay. Chrissy, is there any other questions?
No, sir, that's it.
Okay, well, we're at, you said I had 30 minutes, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, guys, I hope that you got something out of this, and it was a pleasure being able to offer some information. And I'm excited for all of your growth and most importantly, accurate data.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Good job, Chris. Thank you.
Bye.